We're making French onion soup today, my wife's favorite. Okay, so we're making French onion soup today. So what we're gonna do is we have a bunch of onions here. I have white onions and red onions, and I'm gonna start slicing them up right now. Okay, so I'm gonna take the end off here, and then the other end off here, and I'm gonna slice the onion like this thickness here. So you can see almost like a 1/4 inch thick. Okay, so now I cut probably about 1 red onion and about 3 like medium-sized 3 medium-sized yellow onions, and now we're gonna take it to the oven and then start sauteing them down. Okay, so now I'm taking a little bit of extra virgin olive oil, and I put it at the bottom of the pot. And I'm using here a Dutch oven, a pot here. So I put a bit of olive oil, now a little bit of butter, and it's been heating up at it's around medium heat. Okay, we don't want to go too high. So medium heat is plenty enough heat. Don't go high on this. You want to go. We're trying to saute the onions for about 30 to 45 minutes. So we don't want high heat. We want medium heat or medium low heat at the most. Okay, so now I'm gonna throw in the onions now. Okay, so now I'm throwing in the onions. It looks like a lot of onions, but trust me, once you cook this down, it's gonna probably shrink down to about 1/4 of the size that it is right now. So it looks like a lot, but just trust me on this one. It's gonna cook down to almost nothing. So just be patient and let it cook down from here. Medium heat. So while the onions are sauteing here, nice and slowly, like I said, it's gonna take probably about, I would say at least 30 minutes, probably about 45 minutes realistically for that many onions. So you have to be very patient and just let it sweat down, let it saute down to about 1/4 of the size, and you'll see it's going to change color dramatically. It's going to turn from yellow, it's going to turn to almost like a dark brown color, because we're trying to caramelize the onions nice and slowly. In the meantime, I have here some beef broth, which I used this better than bouillon beef broth. You know, you can make your own if you want to, but you know, unless you own a restaurant, I don't see why you need to. So this stuff works really, really well. It's made with roasted beef, and it's amazing. So if you've never tried this, try to look for this in the store. It's really amazing. And I also used Maggi chicken stock. So I have 50% beef stock, 50% chicken stock here, and I'm gonna let it come to a simmer. I'm gonna throw in some bay leaves. I'm gonna throw in a little bit of thyme as well, and just let that sit there. Let these flavors come together and develop, and you're gonna have an unbelievable broth to mix in with the soup at the very end. Okay, so now I'm gonna get the croutons ready to put on top of the soup, and you can use like day-old or 2-day-old bread. In this case here, this bread's about 1 or 2 days old, and you can see it's pretty stale. It's a good way to use leftover bread, by the way. So you take the bread and then start slicing it down with a serrated knife. Always use a serrated knife when you cut bread. You don't want to use a sharp knife, you just want to use a serrated knife that has teeth like this. It cuts bread way easier and way better. So you cut it into about like 1/2 inch thickness like this.
Cook.
Okay, so now I'm going to take a little bit of olive oil and then just make sure I get every piece of the breads, you know, just a little bit covered in a little bit of olive oil, because we're going to throw them in the oven, and we're going to make sure they get nice and brown. We're going to make croutons basically out of these breads here. Okay, so we're ready to go to the oven. We're going to cook them down. Okay, so I put the bread, sliced bread, croutons, in the oven at 350 degrees. I'm gonna leave it in there until they get nice and brown on both sides, get nice and brown and crispy, and we'll check back on them in about 10 or 15 minutes. Okay, so 15 minutes in, the onions, and you know, don't forget, like every couple of minutes, give them a quick little toss. Make sure that, you know, they're all cooking down evenly, and just give them a nice flip every now and then. And you can see how the color is already starting to change, but we're nowhere near where we want to be. So just let it do its thing. Medium heat still. So now is going to be, we're going to start grating some cheese. And you know, the typical cheese for a French onion soup, you want to use Gruyere, which is a Swiss cheese actually. You can use Comté too, which is a French cheese. But for me, you know, the king of cheeses is going to be Gruyere, and a little bit of Parmigiano Reggiano too. But so yeah, Gruyere. Make sure you get this cheese. It's by far the best cheese for this recipe, okay? So now we're going to take it and we're going to start grating it.
Look, Daddy, look.
Wow, nice, man. Okay, now we're just gonna grate it down. Just grate. Just grate. The more, the merrier. As far as I'm concerned, the more cheese in this recipe, the better off you are. Okay, so now we're about 25 minutes in. And as you can see, the onions are slowly starting to turn brown, but we're still not quite there yet. So we're gonna let it go in medium heat just for a little bit longer. Okay?
Hi, Daddy.
Okay, so you can see how the bread, I took it out of the oven, it's been there for like 15-20 minutes. You see how nice and crispy, beautiful, golden brown. And while they're still warm, I'm gonna take a clove of garlic and I'm gonna slowly rub a little bit of the garlic on the crispy hot bread, just like this. See that? Just a little bit, not too much. Not too much. You want to get the aroma of the garlic. You want to rub the clove of garlic on the bread like that. So you just take the clove of garlic and just slowly rub the bread. I actually do that with all the croutons. So just like that. You know. Okay, so now we're about 30 minutes in, and you can see how we've probably shrunk by about half, I would say. But we still have a little bit more way to go. Okay, and now I'm going to take just like a couple of pinches of salt. And we're going to season it now. We didn't season it in the beginning. We're going to season it just a little bit now. And we're going to season it more later. So you want to do just a little bit now. Okay, so now we're looking at about almost an hour later. You have to be very patient for this. You can see how the color is looking nice and beautiful, golden brown. So we're pretty much there. So now we're ready for the next step. And as I said in the beginning, I did not want to season with salt in the beginning because the broth is going to be pretty salty from the broth itself. So you don't want to add too much salt. You want to be able to taste it at the very end, and you decide later if you want to use salt or not. So for right now, I'm going to use some white pepper, which is the perfect kind of pepper to use for this. It has a very, very beautiful, mild, peppery taste without changing the color too much. So white pepper is a beautiful ingredient here instead of black pepper. You can use black pepper too, actually. So now once we mix this in, the black pepper, and the color is looking perfect, now I'm going to take a little bit of sherry vinegar. Just a little touch. It gives a nice little bite to it. Just maybe half a teaspoon. And then now you can use cognac, and a lot of times I will use cognac, but today I'm just going to use some red wine. Just use like a decent red wine, or red wine that you can drink just a little bit, maybe like a quarter cup. I'm going to put it in there and then let that cook down. Okay, so once we added the red wine and then the sherry vinegar, as I showed you earlier, you can see how the colors of the onions, it changed into like a very, very dark amber, like almost like a burgundy color, and you can tell the onions shrank down by a quarter, as I told you earlier. So now we're ready to put a little bit of flour, just like maybe like a teaspoon. You want to put the flour in there. It's very important because the flour is going to help to create a roux, which is a French word, basically a fancy French word that means a thickening agent. So once you put the flour in there and you mix it in, make sure that you mix in the flour pretty good and cook it down for maybe like a minute or so. Okay, so now once I put the flour in there and cook it down for a minute, I strained out the stock, the beef stock and the chicken stock combination. I took out the thyme leaves and I took out the bay leaves, and I'm going to pour it in there. Okay, here we go. So just add a little bit, not too much. Maybe just enough to cover the onions and about an inch on top. Daddy best. So now what we're gonna do is the heat is still at medium. So we're gonna cook down the broth just maybe like about 15-20 minutes. Let the broth and the onions cook down together and let these flavors marry together for 15-20 minutes. And we're gonna move on to the next step from there. Okay, so now that the soup has reduced down and the soup has thickened a little bit, and you can see now we're ready to start putting them in a ramekins. Make sure that you use oven-proof ramekins, the ones that can stand to go in the oven. Ceramic ramekins would be the best. So you fill up the soup, I would say about 3/4 of the way up. Okay, so there we go. So we're about, almost to the top, 80-90% to the top. And now we're gonna take the croutons and we're gonna place some on the soup like this, on the very top, just like that. Just make sure that you're covering, the top layers. Okay, and now here comes my favorite part, which is the cheese part. This I always, you cannot be cheap at this point. You grated all that cheese. You worked so hard to get to this point. So really pack on the Gruyere cheese. You want to pack it on. Okay, so like I was saying, you want to pack it on pretty heavy. Don't be cheap. You worked so hard to get to this point. So you just get the cheese on there. People love the cheese. It's the people's favorite part. So make sure that you pack on heavy. Don't be cheap. So now we got the ramekins ready. Soup is in there. Cheese is on top. Lots of cheese, as you can tell. Now we're going into the oven broiler. Take the broiler at the highest setting it can go. And we're going to put these under the oven broiler. Okay, so I took it out of the oven. And as you can see here, cheese beautifully melted. Golden brown, delicious. And right as it's hot, you want to put on, garnish with a little bit of thyme, fresh thyme on top. And there you go, folks. A beautiful French onion soup made from scratch. It took about an hour and 15 minutes to make. And you can see it's a thing of beauty. So enjoy.